Good evening on this Monday evening right here to the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate and straight on to a nation that's rising up to the CBI being at a war within itself. It clearly is CBI versus CBI under the Modi government, and at stake is the credibility of the country's premier investigative agency, with its special director Rakesh Asthana facing an FIR over bribery charges. The decay is so deep-rooted as it is the ego clash between CBI Director Alok Verma on one hand and Asthana on the other that has led to such an embarrassing situation for the government as well. The PM has now swung into action, summoning both of them. The CBI's charge against Asthana is that he took a 3 crore rupee bribe to settle a case against meat exporter Moin Qureshi. On his part, Asthana has also leveled serious bribery allegations against his own boss, Alok Verma. The ugly fight within the CBI has already become a political potboiler, with opposition parties pointing fingers at the Prime Minister for institutional decay. The all-out war within the CBI is sure to be dominated. The state elections, which are due next month, CBI versus CBI is what we are discussing on the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and let's take this across to an expert panel that's joining us right here. Mr. Shantanu Hussain joins us. He's former Joint Director CBI. Mr. M.N. Singh, former Mumbai Police Commissioner. Prashant Bhushan is going to be joining us shortly. In fact, he's already with us. Senior lawyer at the Supreme Court. Vineet Goenka, ex-co-convener of the IT cell at the BJP. And Suleiman Khan represents the Congress party here. If I may begin with Mr. Prashant Bhushan. Mr. Bhushan, what does this fight within India's premier investigative agency really mean, where the top two men within the agency are at war against each other? And, you know, this doesn't seem to be an individual battle only, because this does expose at one level a very deep institutional crisis.
No, it is certainly a serious crisis, but this crisis has been squarely brought on by the government itself, which insisted on appointing Mr. Rakesh Asthana first as the acting director CBI, though he was not eligible and in violation of all rules, because director, there is no provision for appointing an acting director, and the director had to be selected by a collegium of Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and Chief Justice of India. Instead of doing that, they had appointed Rakesh Asthana as the acting director, though as I said he was not eligible in violation of the rules. We challenged his appointment in the Supreme Court. Thereafter the government was forced to remove him, and thereafter the selection committee appointed Alok Verma as the regular director. But after that, he was again pushed through by the government as the special director, despite the fact that the director pointed out that, look, we are ourselves, the CBI is itself investigating a very serious case against him involving this 5,000 crore money laundering by Sterling Biotech, whose owners, the Sandesaras, have also fled the country, and about whose diaries show that Rakesh Asthana had received 4 crores from them over 4 different dates, etc. There are 4 entries in that diary pertaining to Rakesh Asthana. His daughter was married at their farmhouse. His son was working with this Sandesaras at Sterling Biotech, etc. And therefore, the CBI director had warned at that very stage that far from appointing him as a special director, he should not remain in the CBI. But the government insisted and pushed him through, because he is seen to be very close to the government, to Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi, etc. And therefore, perhaps the government thought that it would be useful and convenient to have their own man there as the special director, so that he could do their political bidding. Because today, unfortunately, I mean, CBI has always been regarded as a caged parrot, but today, unfortunately, it is being used for political purposes against political opponents.
Okay, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, you raise an important point that there is a lot of political shadow boxing that's also happening in this entire affair, and I will come back and touch upon some of the specific issues that you've raised, and one of those specific issues, of course, is appointment in just a bit. But if I may take this across to Mr. M.N. Singh, and I also wanted to go to Shantanu Hussain next, but M.N. Singh, all the allegations that are flying thick and fast in this entire case are based on one premise, and that is corruption. What happens to the public image of the agency, which is our refuge in corruption cases? You talk about any high-profile probe that's required, and the first thing that anybody who wants a fair trial says, get a CBI probe done. And look at the kind of corruption charges that are flying thick and fast within the agency itself. And it's not between some two menial officers. It's between the #1 and #2 of India's premier investigative agency. So in some sense, CBI is a refuge as far as corruption cases are concerned. What does it really mean for the image of the CBI, for the faith that a lot of people had in the investigative agency? Mr. Singh.
Well, these murky happenings within the CBI today has completely damaged the image of the CBI. The CBI's image is today in mud, and it's very unfortunate that the premier investigating agency of the country should not have the trust of the people at large. And I agree with Mr. Prashant Bhushan that the appointment of Mr. Asthana was a big mistake. Asthana is a very controversial person. There have been so many things, and he is directly said to be very close to the Prime Minister. All that is happening today in CBI is in some way also impacts on the image of the Honorable Prime Minister of the country. Such a person should not have been brought there, and the CBI director had reservations about this man. Now, with his bringing such a controversial position in such a high position in the CBI was a big mistake, and today the government has to face an account for this mistake. Now, this is the appointment of the officers to this CBI. There it has been there. We have noticed not only in this government but in the earlier governments also that very wrong persons were appointed to head the CBI. We have heard of the cases of two, three former CBI directors who faced serious charges of corruption, and they were facing inquiries. They were appointed by the earlier government. Some of these CBI directors have behaved in a most unethical manner and most immoral manner, going about meeting political people and inviting people to their bungalows of all types and all characters, even people who are facing investigations. I am sorry to say CBI's image has taken a big beating today, and it needs to be restored.
Right.
And that can be done only by sacking both these top officials. They are not working, making allegations. It has been put in writing by both sides. Mr. Alok Verma, the director, has got a case registered against his #2 man, and #2 man has made written allegations of corruption against Verma to the cabinet secretary and to the CVC. It's not an ordinary thing. Even the director of the director of the CBI has lost his moral authority to control the CBI. And the whole structure,
Singh,
all this
Mr. Singh, give me a minute.
Who is the leader of CBI? There is no leader.
Absolutely. That is the big issue. But that also brings me to the point, and I think Shantanu Sen is the best place to answer this question. When a #1 and #2 in an investigative agency like CBI are at war with each other, and this is public fallout that's happening between two men, it's playing out in full public glare. When was the last time CBI was raiding its own headquarters? I mean, we're talking about some alternate universe of sort, it seems. The CBI is raiding its own headquarters on allegations, an FIR lodged against #2. #2 is writing to CVC and to the cabinet secretary of how corrupt his #1 is. What does all of this, we are so busy talking about perception, but what does all of this really do to the morale of the officers within CBI? I mean, in many ways, it seems that we've come a very long way. The CBI was once a caged parrot. I'm wondering if it's fair to say it's a piranha pond today. Mr. Shantanu Sen.
Yeah, CBI was once upon I suppose it's some time ago, a very respected organization. People looked upon CBI for great investigations. And that was not too far away. Even till the late 90s, CBI had a reputation. It's only after 2000 that the CBI's reputation has been falling. And I agree with what Mr. M.N. Singh has said and what Mr. Prashant Bhushan has said. That CBI first became a caged parrot, and today CBI is a corrupt parrot. Very unfortunate. Now, the only way this can be set right, as Mr. M.N. Singh as a police officer has very correctly said, get rid of both these two. CBI has many officers. CBI has 4,000 inspectors, more than 12.5 DIGs, a dozen directors, joint directors. They are not all dishonest. No charges have been made against them. CBI will recover. CBI has gone through a bad time even in the 80s when Mrs. Gandhi returned and all the Shah Commission cases which were investigated by were under investigation and trial were criminally closed, I will say. CBI went through a bad time then, but new directors came and CBI image was restored. Because the base is fine, CBI has good officers, CBI has good recruitment policy. Now this situation, government should take it by the scruff of their neck and remove both of them immediately. Place at the present moment number 3 in hierarchy in charge and tell the CBC police member to investigate this and look into the charges, and if there is anything wrong, they should be investigated or departmentally dealt with.
Okay.
But as Mr. M.N. Singh very correctly has said,
Mr. Shantanu,
they have no place in the CBI anymore.
Right. Fair point. And that's a very important thing. They have no place in the CBI anymore, especially because there is so much allegation that has been raised, so much mudflinging that has already happened. But let me turn to the two politicians on this show, and I will turn to you, Mr. Vineet Goenka, first. One of the big points that Mr. Prashant Bhushan made early on was the appointment of Mr. Asthana itself. I will come to the PMO stepping in and all of that in just a bit. But do you believe this infighting dates back to the period when Mr. Asthana was appointed, much to the annoyance and objection of the CBI director, who had very categorically stated that do not appoint someone who we are probing for in any case in the 20,000 crore money laundering case, referring to the Sterling Biotech case. You know, reservations were made by his immediate supervisor, and yet this appointment was made. In hindsight, will you be candid enough to at least admit today that you did err in that appointment?
Well, Mr. Bhushan has liberty to talk what he wants to talk. I can't say whether he spoke right or wrong. What I would suggest is we should not jump guns right now and wait for CVC and let us see out what has happened in PMO today. So let the two discussion happen, and the discussion will be out maybe in a day or two, and then we'll come to know what discussion happened there really. A. B. He himself said, and all these people know that the appointment is done with 3 people in place in the team. Chief Justice, then there is the Prime Minister and the opposition leader, if there is an opposition leader. In this case, particular case, it was leader of the largest party. So what essentially Prashant Bhushan is saying that Chief Justice was in coercion for appointment if it is only Prime Minister. So probably all the 3 people who appoint are responsible and they cannot shirk the responsibility. My suggestion will be, let us not jump guns right now. In an organization, there are 2 things. Either there can be an HR issue between both of them, or there can be real criminality which has happened. So now let us wait for the time, whether it is an HR issue which should be tackled intra-departmentally, or whether it is a criminal issue of taking bribe by any one. Now, as far as the notation of caged parrot went, the caged parrots was a remark made by Justice Lodha in 2013, and also he gave one more sangya, that was his master's voice. It was purely then the condition of CBI in the Manmohan Singh era. Now, right now, there are 2 officers, they have alleged each other. I think they are matured enough. The systems is very matured. The systems have not fallen apart. Let the system take its place. So, I would request all the esteemed panelists who are there.
No, Vineet Goenka, please let me come in for a minute. Mr. Vineet Goenka, let me ask you a straight question. You are absolutely right that the Supreme Court judge said CBI is like a caged parrot and his master's voice, no denying that, and Suleiman Khan is going to answer that question. How on earth can you say this is just an internal matter and you know it's going to resolve itself? You have the number 1 and number 2 in CBI go at each other in full public glare, not today, but for months. And what has been happening on this matter? Is this disciplinary action being taken by India's premier investigative agency? And we are not raising charges of discipline here. We are raising charges of absolute corruption. What faith do I have in the CBI today? How can you just dismiss it by saying it's one matter which will resolve itself? I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
If you just replay my tape, I said whether it is an HR issue or it is a criminality. Now, I may not be able to judge here or comment on this because I don't have access to the papers and what happened there. So, my request to you and the panelists and the audience is, let us wait whether it is an HR issue or whether there is somebody who is really corrupt, or both of them are corrupt. Now, there are 3 situations. Both of them are corrupt. One of them is corrupt if there is an HR issue. Now, this can only come out when the CVC gives you a judgment or a finding. Now, I am not in a position to comment on that. A. B. we will have to see that this institution otherwise is good. Now, two people having this cannot be commented on the CBI's this thing. I think we are a fairly very mature democracy. The Prime Minister has a very nice image and it will bounce back. So whatever happened is something which is not been liked by people like us also. But I will suggest let us wait. And I would also request Congress to not to jump guns, and do something which is called as immatured, prematured commenting on any situation without knowing what are the details of this. So Suleiman Khan ji actually can pass on this message to his president Rahul Gandhi ji not to speak out of the turn.
Okay, Vineet Goenka, give me a minute. I will ask a question to Suleiman Khan. And Suleiman Khan, you have two questions to be answered there. One, are you politicizing yet another matter like Vineet Goenka says that doesn't need to be politicized? And B, the CBI seems to have come a full circle under both the Congress and the BJP. It was a caged parrot, his master's voice under the Congress. Under the BJP, you've got the #1 and #2 fight. There is no accountability. Corruption charges are being fled at each other. It's become a piranha pond, if I may. So, you're as much responsible for the decay of this institution that we are seeing today as the BJP is. Suleiman.
Yeah, actually, to say that Congress is politicizing this issue is completely uncalled for, because this issue, CBI is the premium investigation agency of the country, and if the #1 and #2 in the CBI are leveling allegations against each other, and if #2 in the CBI, that is Mr. Asthana, is being booked for criminal misconduct and corruption allegations, and an FIR has been registered against him by its own agency, and he is the prime accused, I think a lot has to be explained by the government, which has pushed his appointment as a special director in the agency. Second, about what Justice Lodha, what Supreme Court has commented about CBI during the Congress regime, I think whatever has happened during the Congress regime, it's very clear, it's out in the open. People have voted out the Congress in 2014. As on today, for past 4.5 years, we have seen how the constitutional authorities and bodies have been demeaned, undermined, denigrated and degraded. How it has been, controlled through extra constitutional means by this Modi regime. And it's not about CBI, it's about a lot of constitutional authorities. And we have been raising this issue time and again, the Congress party. And the same is happening with the CBI. And the investigation has to be conducted in a very proper and thorough manner, because the FIR is a very serious issue which has been registered against Mr. Asthana, who was objected by the director, Mr. Alok Verma. Second, I am not able to understand why the prime accused in the FIR, the special director, Mr. Asthana, who is actually a blue-eyed boy of Mr. Modi, an IPS officer of the Gujarat cadre, who is still being investigated in another case of money laundering of Sterling Biotech, why the Prime Minister called him and met him? I am not saying he cannot meet him. He can meet him. There is no problem. But actually, he is a prime accused.
You can't object to that.
Prime Minister meeting a prime accused in a corruption case. Give a wrong message.
Suleiman.
Let the investigation agency investigate it.
Suleiman, let me come in there. Let me please come in there.
In the first time in the history of independent India, CBI is raiding its own office. This has happened in the first time.
Yes, that's very funny.
In the history
Actually,
of the
it's not funny, it's very tragic. Okay, Suleiman Khan, give me a minute.
It's not funny, it's very serious.
I understand. Suleiman Khan, give me a minute. That's very tragic that the CBI is raiding its own headquarters. It has never happened in India, but you make a larger point. I think I will answer one of your questions, that why should the Prime Minister meet? Here are the top 2 officials of an agency that directly reports to the PM, directly reports to the Department of Personnel and Training, of whom the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister is in charge of the department. So he has every business meeting them. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, before I go back to Prashant Bhushan, Vineet Goenka, I have a square, fair question to ask of you. I know everybody in the BJP is now saying the Prime Minister has finally stepped in. He is going to take cognizance of the situation. You said that in your opening remarks. Is it a little too late? This issue didn't brew today. This has been going on for months. The CBI functions under the Department of Personnel and Training, the DOPT as it's called, of which the minister in charge is the Prime Minister. What took him so long? And is this going to make a difference now, given how it's playing out?
So let me explain to you the 2 different things. One, If there a letter has been written, I think there is a procedure to be followed. The procedure was followed of investigation. And when an FIR is filed, the things are different. Now, in this particular case, no permission was taken from the government. The government would not know that if the agency is going to file an FIR. So please understand this. Once the FIR filed, it was necessary for PMO to take the cognizance, and I think they did the right thing. And as the head of the country, he has all the right to meet anybody and everybody, whosoever he feels deemed right. And in this particular case, intra-departmental rivalry or a case of corruption, both, I think will be investigated. But whereas if you see in the case of Congress, it was not intra-departmental rivalry or a case of corruption of an officer of CBI, but it was a tool which was used by then government of Manmohan Singh to put their allies in place, Manmohan Singh ji in place and other allies in place. So probably we see these are two different distinct cases. One where the ruling party then was using them as a tool, and in the current situation, two officers are fighting between each other. The ruling government has nothing to do with this fighting between them. No, so these are two different cases altogether.
I don't know if you can wash off your hands of this mess by saying the ruling government has nothing to do and is CBI is fully autonomous. In fact, one of my questions a little later on is that autonomy a price that we are paying for this public showdown? But Prashant,
using this is a
Bhushan,
tool against their
one of the things that is,
it was a party.
I understand that. Give me a minute, Mr. Goenka.
In the current
Mr.
case,
Bhushan,
two officers are either corrupt or they are alleging they are corrupt or there is an
Goenka,
issue.
I'm going across to Prashant Bhushan. You've made your point. Sorry, this is not how I do a show. Please give me a minute. Prashant Bhushan, sir,
it's an argument of a loser when your people are
that,
caught in corruption.
No, 1 second, Suleiman, please. I don't want politicians to hijack this debate. I don't want politicians to hijack this debate. There is a reason why I have experts and legal experts as well. Let me go across to them. Mr. Bhushan, one of the things that's being cited quite repeatedly is that the CBI needed the permission from the PMO to act against its own officer, and the question is that it wasn't sought. So on technical grounds, that was wrong, and should that have been done? And is that why, the Prime Minister stepping in now is perhaps well-timed? That's one question. The second question is that this has festered on for months without any government intervention. So in some sense, the government has also failed, if not been very, iffy about handling this. And many people will also say it's now touching other agencies, ED, income tax, RAW. I mean, can this hardly be cited as rule of law and an autonomous agency acting at its own free will?
Well, to answer your first question, you see, the government brought in this amendment to the Prevention of Corruption Act 3 months ago. They introduced 17A saying that before any investigation by the CBI, they need to take the permission of the government. Now, firstly, this is a totally unconstitutional provision. It has been struck down twice by the Supreme Court. First, when it was a single directive in the CBI manual, which required the CBI to take permission of the government for investigating officers of Joint Secretary and above. The Supreme Court struck it down, saying that this is totally unconstitutional. It will make the CBI ineffective to investigate corruption, because it's really the corruption of the government that the CBI has to investigate. And if you have to take the permission of the very person that you are seeking to investigate, then how will any investigation proceed? Thereafter, they brought it as an amendment to the CVC Act. Again, it was questioned. Again, it was struck down by the Supreme Court. Now, they have brought it in as an amendment to the Prevention of Corruption Act. In this case, as I understand, the CBI has taken the view that this taking of bribe is not in the performance of its official duty, etc. And therefore, they don't need to take the permission of the government, because they are saying that this permission is required only when you are seeking to investigate a public servant who is either acting on some policy or something like that. And therefore, it is not really required when it is a straightforward case of bribery. Now, this is a debatable issue as to whether permission was required or not, but clearly this provision is unconstitutional. Quite apart from that, you see, we have been saying for a long time that the CBI should not be under the administrative control of the government. It is not merely the question of appointment of the director. So many other officers of the CBI are appointed and they are appointed at the behest of the government, which should not be the case. The CBI needs to be an independent investigating agency. Therefore, we had been saying that you place it under the administrative control of the Lokpal. Now, unfortunately, the government has not even appointed a Lokpal. They have not placed it under the administrative control of the Lokpal. If there had been a Lokpal, at least the Lokpal could have investigated all these issues.
Fair point. Fair point. Mr. Bhushan, hold that thought now. I want to go across to MN Singh. And MN Singh, the sum and substance of this whole debate is that CBI's number 1 says CBI number 2 took a 2-3 crore bribe. That number is varying with every report from a person, and hence an FIR was lodged against number 2. Number 2 before this had complained to the CVC and to the CABSECI and all of that a bribe was in fact taken by his own supervisor. That's number 1. That person has told a magistrate he believes he had paid a bribe for number 2, though he never really met or spoke to number 2. Is this really boiling down to a classic he says versus he says? And how is it then going to proceed from here on?
Well, there are a couple of issues which have been raised in this discussion. First of all, somebody said that let's wait and let's follow the procedure and all that. Well, the war is out in the open and you can't be just waiting. You got to act. And number 2, about the procedural part, whether the CBI should have registered the case or not, do not forget that there is a written complaint filed with the CBI of Mr. Asthana taking money, and that has been registered, recorded under section 164 of the Criminal Procedure Code. When a complaint of a cognizable case is lodged, the case has to be registered, and therefore there is no technical violation of the procedure. Whatever is the constitutional provision, Mr. Prashant Bhushan has already explained very clearly. Now, the third point is whether the Prime Minister should have called Asthana or not. I think the Prime Minister, it was his not only right, it is his duty to call Asthana. The CBI directly works under him, and therefore it was very good that the Prime Minister called him. Now, the fourth point is that about the appointments to the CBI and the CBI functioning. Well, it is unfortunate that the CBI even today functions under the Delhi Special Establishment Act, which was enacted by the British government, and that was for a different purpose altogether. There is no specific law under which the central agencies like the CBI, IB and RAW function. It's high time that laws are enacted, separate laws, and there is a proper system laid down of accountability and things like that, monitoring and all that. I see some merit in the suggestion of Mr. Prashant Bhushan that CBI should be made totally independent. It's not only the independence of the director by giving him a 2-year tenure, that's not enough, but that is necessary, but it's not enough. I think CBI should be completely taken away from the government control, placed under an independent constitutional body so that it functions correctly and rightly as per the law.
I'm actually going to turn around and ask you a different question a little later in the show, which is, are we paying a price for too much autonomy? Can police be made autonomous? And look at the price we are paying with 2 autonomous officers there. But give me a minute now, because I want to go across to Mr. Shantanu Sen. And Mr. Sen, I'm not going to get into specific details, but the DSP who was arrested today, he had allegedly created fake deposition for Mr. Asthana to target CBI Director Alok Verma. Now, these fraud guys were caught after finding that the person deposed was not in Delhi that day, and which is how they figured out that these documents were in fact faked and they were basically manufactured by this DSP. But should the buck not stop with Mr. Asthana, who actually used them to present evidence against Alok Verma? I mean, why should the buck stop with the DSP, who was the IO at that stage?
No, the buck is not stopping with the DSP. DSP has been named in the FIR and so has been Mr. Asthana. There are 4 people named in the FIR. DSP is one of the actors in the play. He did something which helped Mr. Asthana to write to the CVC and complain about the corruption of the director CBI. So, this is a criminal conspiracy, and the buck doesn't stop with the DSP. You are wrong. The buck continues, because all this is acting in unison in conspiracy. All these allegations, if they are true, and that will be the result of investigation, then all those who have been named in the FIR, all the 4 persons and including Mr. Asthana, are equally guilty of the crime. The act of the DSP is the act of Mr. Asthana. That is how the conspiracy law works. So don't be under the impression the buck is stopping with the director, with the DSP. The buck will involve everybody who has been named in the FIR.
No, I was actually referring to the fact that he has been arrested, and which is why I was just taking the discussion forward. But you're right, if he's named in the FIR, then the buck stops as much with Mr. Asthana. If I may take a quick follow-up with you, Mr. Shantanu Sen, and then move forward. What does all of this really mean for the ongoing cases, you know, the corruption cases that there are, especially the ones that Mr. Asthana is handling? Because many people believe that, you know, he's handling the big UPA era corruption cases, whether it's INX Media or whether it's ASL Maxis. What happens to cases like this now that he has been named in an FIR and there is a pending probe?
Well, the CBI functions as a team. Mr. Asthana is heading the large team of officers as the head of the special investigating team, which is investigating and following up all the serious cases like Augusta Westland, Vijay Mallya case, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, and the rest of them. But there are each individual officers involved. Mr. Asthana supervises them. So this often happens. I was director CBI, retired. That doesn't mean my cases also went. The other officers, the new director took over. He sat with the officers who are actually investigating the case. He learned the ropes and he continued to supervise. There is no problem. Mr. Asthana going away will not affect the cases under investigation because there is a large team investigating these cases.
Okay.
Of that there is,
right.
There should be no
okay, so the evidence on record is going to help.
On that. There should be no problem
okay.
with that.
Okay, fair point. Very quickly, Mr. Vineet Goenka, before I take a really quick breather here, I have to ask you this question. As far as the ongoing corruption cases is concerned, there is a school of thought that the tenures of both the present CBI director and the ED director must extend for them to complete ongoing cases. Only then will these be fair. Will the government be open to a suggestion like that?
Well, I'm not in a position to take this because this is the decision which has to be taken by the right people who are there, and I don't have an access to their mindset right now or what is going on in their heart. So it will be unfair on my part to comment on that. But rather, I will tell you one thing: any institutions and organizations are flowing rivers. They do not stop because somebody has ejected out or somebody has been injected in. So as rightly said by the earlier speaker, people join and people leave. Whether people leave because they retire, whether people leave because they resign, or people leave because they have been thrown out. In that all cases, organizations run, and this organization will also run in the case whether there is an appointment or whether there is a continuation of the people. But I would like to write one more thing before I put myself down, is request once again Rahul Gandhiji not to speak out of turn, immaturely and prematurely. He should be matured. He is representing one of the organizations. When he speaks, you know, some people may get impacted or influenced, even if not the larger crowd of the country, but a small part of the country may be impacted by his talk. So my request to him will be, speak a little maturely. This is not a good sign that two people are fighting within the CBI, and we all would request, let sense prevail.
Mr. Goenka, you are a political spokesperson, Mr. Goenka, and keep your hand on your heart and tell me, if you were in the opposition today, and something like this was happening in the CBI, would you not rake this up? What are you talking about? This is a political potboiler, and it's for everybody to take political advantage of this. You are a political animal, you would know this better. But very quickly, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, I want to ask you a question, sir, and they'll take a very quick breather here.
May I come in to reply to this?
This mudslinging has been on for 1 year with the CVC also being involved. No, give me a minute, sir. Both officers are, but the irony is that both these officers are citing the same Moin Qureshi case to their advantage. There are some schools of thought, there are some experts out there who believe there is perhaps merit in the argument that the whole Moin Qureshi case needs to be re-examined afresh by by yet another independent team and not the CBI. Would you concur with a view like that?
Well, in a situation of this kind where there are allegations and counter allegations being made within the organization, as I said, if we had had a Lokpal, the Lokpal could have investigated these cases instead of the CBI itself. But in the absence of a Lokpal, the CBI is the only agency which can investigate these cases, and that is why, I mean, I would say that I would give full credit to Mr. Alok Verma, that despite knowing that Mr. Rakesh Asthana has been brought in at the behest of the PMO, that he is the blue-eyed boy of the government, he has not flinched and he has discharged his duty without flinching, which is when he found that there are cases to be filed against his own deputy, that is his special director, he has done so without flinching, and that is the duty of an upright and independent officer. And currently, at least, he is functioning independently of the government. This, to his credit, I must say that.
Okay, fair point indeed. We will take a really quick breather right here on the show. I'll be back in just a minute and we will take forward the discussion with Prashant Bhushan, Shantanu Sen, MN Singh, Sulaiman Khan and Vineet Goenka. In just a minute, we will talk about the whole existence of the CBI, the moving of High Court and of course the bringing in of a fresh new individual instead of just these two tainted men right now. In a minute. It's so good to be back with you once again on the India development debate right here on ET Now. And before I go any forward, I have a quick question to ask of Mr. Shantanu Sen. And Mr. Sen, Mr. Asthana has moved the Delhi, is likely to move the Delhi High Court. Will the court now really be resolving the matter as far as this bitter open feud is concerned? And will this also delay matters because he's likely to seek an injunction against any decision that the CBI may take on the basis of the FIR that has been lodged against him? And you know, is now court the port of call to resolve a matter like this?
What can the court do? Court can only give him bail, anticipatory bail at this stage, or he can seek a quashing of the FIR, but I don't think he can do that. The FIR is based on a written statement under section 164 CRPC. Mr. Asthana is moving the court to seek probably relief from arrest. Beyond that, there is nothing he can do. He can move the Supreme Court, I suppose, saying that permission has not been taken and therefore the FIR is unconstitutional or whatever it is. But I agree with Mr. Prashant Bhushan. This very law will be challenged and should be challenged and will be quashed. Already it has been quashed twice. You can't put a law like this that you have to take permission of the department whose officer you are investigating for corruption before starting a corruption. There is sanction required for prosecution. That is enough protection. Why have this? So I don't think he can get much relief.
Let me just take this. Fair point. I understand he may not get too much of a relief there. But Sulaiman Khan, let me come to you. And I think Vineet Goenka has raised this point repeatedly in the show. It's only fair that I ask you. Is this issue being politicized? I mean, you know, and has this become political because your party, Mr. Gandhi has now tweeted, has stepped in? Because the CBI for a while, and it's not just under this government, even in the previous government, the allegations have been that CBI has been used as a weapon of political vendetta to settle political scores. And is that why we are where we are on the CBI? That's really the moot question of this entire debate, is it not? No. Sulaiman.
You know, I am not able to understand for past four and a half years how come opposition party, the principal opposition party, that is the Congress party, raising issues which are in the national interest or issues which relates to the corruption of the government or misgovernance of the government, which are being raised by the Congress party, are being, branded or tagged as issues which are, coming out of political consideration or issues being politicized. Is this not a proper issue which a principal opposition party, Congress party, should raise? Is the number 2 in the CBI, who has been objected by the director CBI, Mr. Alok Verma at that time, and even the leader of opposition, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, at that time, when he was appointed, is it not the correct issue when he is being, FIR has been registered against him for corruption, and Congress party and Mr. Rahul Gandhi, national president of the party, raising this issue that a blue-eyed boy of the Prime Minister is now booked for corruption? Is it politicization? I think it is the responsibility of the Congress party to raise issues like this. As far as Mr. Goenka's statement is concerned that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is behaving immaturely or he is pulling the gun or jumping the gun whatsoever, I think he can say this only, because Mr. Rahul Gandhi has raised very pertinent issues in past 2-3 years with which the BJP is very uncomfortable, and more specifically in relation to the corruption which is directly linked to the Prime Minister office. Either is Mr. Asthana's issues or the Rafale deal or Mehul Choksi, Nirav Modi, Vijay Mallya, all who have taken the money from the country, outside the country, and he has raised all these issues. So therefore, the BJP spokesperson in the party are very uncomfortable with Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and therefore they have no excuse to just say that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is behaving immaturely.
I get your point.
I think Mr. Rahul Gandhi is behaving very responsibility as the president of the principal opposition party.
Suleiman Khan, I get your point, sir. Okay, I have to cut you short there. I get your point, but I will go across to, I get your point, Suleiman Khan, but I will go across to MN Singh. And MN Singh, there is a larger question about the legality of CBI. The Guwahati High Court, by a detailed order, had declared it to be an illegal and unconstitutional organization. The Supreme Court stayed it in November 2013. And, matter stands there for the last 5 years. Is it time? Many people believe SC adjudicates its legality. Is there an issue now because of the CBI being autonomous and being independent? Should it not be responsible for its actions? And in fact, one of the suggestions on the table is, why should the CBI not be reporting to Parliament instead of, a DOPT?
Well, that is what I told you earlier, that there is a need to enact a complete law which should govern the functioning of the central agencies for the CBI, IB, RW and all that. And that should decide who should the CBI report to, under which authority it should function. And there is a case that it should be placed under an independent institution, so that there is no charge of political interference and meddling. Now I agree with you that the issue should not be politicized, and well, if there is a charge against the present government that the CBI is being misused, the similar charges allegations were made against the Congress earlier when they were in power. It's not that these allegations are being made for the first time. It is unfortunate that the CBI has not been allowed to function in a proper professional manner as an independent authority. CBI would very much like to function as one. So there is a case for enacting a law, placing it under an independent agency and letting it function in a proper manner according to the law. I am sure if Mr. Asthana is really very close to the Prime Minister, I am sure the Honorable Prime Minister must be regretting appointing this man to the CBI. He has been a very controversial person all through his career, and therefore appointing such a person to a prestigious organization like CBI, which had such stalwarts like Mr. Kohli and Mr. Arul and Mr. Narasimhan, and I saw Mr. Vijay Ramarao when I was investigating the 93 blast case. Wonderful officers. Wonderful officers have been there in CBI. It's only in the last couple of years, about a decade or so, that the image has been very badly damaged, because there is a lot of wheeling, dealing in appointments of this directors CBI.
Mr. MMSN, please let me come in there. I've just got the last 3.5 minutes on the show. I will have to cut you short there, I'm sorry. But Mr. Sen, given the mug that has come out, is it time for an outsider with sound reputation and track record who could be brought in to lead the institution now? It's not as if only number 2 is facing allegations. He's leveled similar charges, if not graver charges, against his own supervisor, against the CBI director. Is it time to take a hard call, get the 2 men out, get somebody fresh, and let him lead the institution or her lead the institution?
Not only that, let the CBI appointees, those who look after CBI, go back to the founding fathers of the CBI. The founding fathers of the CBI looked upon it as an investigating agency. They recruited investigative officers at the level of sub-inspector. They recruited investigating officers at the level of deputy superintendent of police, and they rose to ranks. Sub-inspectors went up to the DIG rank, the deputy superintendent of police went to the joint director's rank. Now, these recruitments have stopped at the level of the gazetted officers. They are not being done anymore. So, the senior officers are those who come on deputation, and they have not really learned investigation. They are very competent officers, but you learn investigation on the job. Then, as far as directors and special directors of CBI must come through the ranks. They must have done, they must do their tenure as SP, joint director. You cannot have an outsider. They have stopped. They have just placed anybody senior enough to place a joint director.
Absolutely. An investigation like this requires specialized skills. I've got the last 2 minutes on the show, and I request both Vineet Goenka and Sulaiman Khan to make this brief. Mr. Goenka, the obvious question that one must ask you is that Alok Verma is going to retire in any case in January. Is Mr. Asthana the right man to take on, being his deputy? Is he the right man to head the CBI? Isn't there a greater need for a review of the appointment process itself? That's a larger question that I think our political class must answer.
I have total faith in the recruitment process which is there and the process which has been followed right now. The Prime Minister, leader of opposition, and the Supreme Court judge. So I would not like to comment right now and put anything in place. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. In the current case, there is no case of political interference. It's a case of two officers fighting with each other. But the case where Kothrochi was given a clean sheet, the case where Mulayam Singh was being observed by the CBI are the classical cases where the state was actually interfering in the cases, in the day-to-day activity of CBI. So I would request Congress once again through a channel not to act prematurely and act immaturely in this particular case. And I would like to close here right now.
Okay, a quick last word I'll give to Sulaiman Khan for being patient and bearing us all out. And Sulaiman, many people believe that this is going to play out in a full-blown battle that's inevitable. Do you think it can be managed? For the reputation of the agency, this should be done at the earliest. Isn't it fair we keep politics out of it for the time being?
Only 2 points. One, the argument made by Mr. Goenka about Kutrachi and other things, I think it's an argument of a loser completely. You are caught red-handed, you are, scratching and invoking history, which has, Congress party has faced a lot of elections after that, and that thing is gone now. So don't, as you are being caught, you are arguing as you are being caught very, red-handed, and you are arguing like a loser. Second, about politicization, I think Congress party is doing a very responsible job. Number 2 in the CBI is being, accused of something which is very serious. An FIR has been registered. He is the prime accused. I think it is for the government who has, pushed him inside the CBI to reply to this.
Okay. All right. Let's not get repetitive, but thank you very much, Sulaiman Khan, Vineet Goenka, Shantanu Sen, MN Singh, and of course Prashant Bhushan for joining us on this edition of the India Development Debate, even as that murky battle within the CBI, and it almost seems that the institution is at war within itself, plays on. In a way, I believe it is very good that corruption in CBI is emerging thanks to this internal battle, because everyone should know about it, and everyone should know how crores are paid, how influence is used to either push or suppress cases, and this is the state of our premier investigative agency. This is the state of CBI, where number 1 and number 2 are at war, and they are not at war unlike what people want us to believe on HR issues and disciplinary issues. They are on war, alleging grave corruption charges at each other. That's the state of CBI right now. I will end the discussion right here because I think each one of us needs to rethink how our institutions are being run and what is the way forward. Thank you very much for being with us in this edition of the India Development Debate.